I got
Okay.
it. It popped up here. Sorry
Awesome.
about that, guys. Everybody on the call could be familiar with this, but I want to go through it really quickly just in case somebody isn't, because it does factor into how you use LinkedIn. So when we look at in a complex business-to-business sale, buyers go through phases in making a buying decision. And this is different people call them different things, but basically a buyer starts off as they're unaware that they have a problem or that they need some help. And let's say we run content marketing efforts for a medium-sized company, and we think everything is going along great. We're blogging, we're running webinars, we're doing what we think is all the right things, and then all of a sudden we find out, oh, video is getting really big and we're not doing video. And so we become aware that there's something that we're not doing, and we start looking into it. So now we're interested in the topic of video. And usually what buyers will do at this point is if they start researching what the options are, how can I go about creating video? What's the best way for us to get into the video content part of content marketing? And one of the steps that we will take is to start looking for experts, and we're Googling it, and we're seeing what's being written about it and what kind of books are available, and on social media, who's talking about video content and what can I learn from them. And so we begin to figure out what our options are about how do we get video content done. And we can say, all right, we can set up our own, we can start with an iPhone and see where we get from that. Then we can buy equipment and set up a studio. We can go to a videographer. We can just hire a company to handle it for us. What are the various ways that we might go about doing this? And so we're beginning to read and then get conversations with experts on the topic. And then from there, the experts will say, for the case of this, for the purpose of this example, let's say we decide we want to create a studio. And so we've got an expert that's counseling us on what kind of equipment we need, but maybe we're going to start looking into those vendors a little bit more closely. And so we're moving now along into the evaluating stage of the buying process. So we're getting more and more focused on what kind of solution we want and who we think we want to do business with. And in the evaluating stage, that's where we're having conversations. There's demos done, there's proposals done, and then a purchase decision is made. So on LinkedIn, the difference between how you use a profile page and how you use a company page can be dependent on where the person is in the buying process. So the personal profile pages will always get more traffic than a company page does, unless you are Hewlett-Packard. A couple of years ago spent $1 million seeing how many followers they could get to their company page, and they got a lot of people visiting their company page. But most of us are not in the category of spending $1 million on something that's basically a branding exercise. So your personal profiles are really where you want to focus in order to get the most awareness and to get the most engagement, because LinkedIn tells us that personal profiles in general get 8 times the engagement of a company page. And this is different than you would see on Facebook, even on Twitter and on some of these other social media where people go there to interact with the brand. They're actually coming to LinkedIn to interact with another person or with other people. So we always talk about the profile pages as being key to a really good social media program that's going to get you engaged with your target prospects. And what these profile pages are good for is building awareness and expanding that awareness. And this is, if you've got employees, this is where you really can leverage their personal profiles to reach their networks by having them share and repost things that you are sharing, or posting on, even if it's on the company page. You use their profiles to expand that awareness beyond there. The profile pages tend to drive a bit more top of the funnel traffic, and that's those unaware or aware and just beginning to be interested people. I'm doing my research, and I'm going to be putting keywords into the LinkedIn search engine. Profiles are going to show up. I'm going to be going into groups and asking questions, and it's the individuals that I'm going to be interacting with there. It's the profile is really the jumping off point for the one-to-one relationship building that you at some point want to take off of LinkedIn, because as we talked about, I think it was last week, our kinds of complex sales don't get closed on social media. There's a human being that has to be involved in it. That's that relationship aspect of it. So in most cases, you use the personal profile. That's where you start building those one-to-one relationships. And then for your subject matter experts, whether that's you or somebody that you're managing a program for, it's their personal profile that's used to build their visibility and position them as thought leaders and experts there. So the company pages, and this is a, and I'm going to call it a mistake that we see almost every company make in the beginning stages of their being involved on LinkedIn, is if they set up a company page and they're posting status updates on that company page. And to them, that's a LinkedIn program, but it's really missing the opportunity, again, to have that one-on-one relationship, which is so important. But that doesn't mean that the company page isn't important, because LinkedIn data also shows that although you get lower traffic numbers to a company page, they tend to be a little bit further along in the buying process. And I think this is because by the time I'm looking at specific vendors, specific companies, I'm already through from unaware to aware to interested, researching. Now I'm going to start selecting vendors to look at a little more closely. We would call this the short list. For those of you that have been in business-to-business sales and marketing before, this is where the short list of vendors gets called in to do the presentations or the demos or whatever, and a proposal comes out of there. So those are the people that are going to your company page. You can drive them off the company page to a demo or to scheduling an appointment with you. That's more likely to happen here. Company pages are great for recruiting because employees go there to get sort of a feel for what the company is about. And it's also critical for supporting the brand, because if you don't match the messaging and the look and feel of the company on the company page to what you're doing elsewhere, you get that disconnect when somebody goes to the company page if they see something that doesn't look like your website. So just reinforcing and supporting the brand there. So that's the point that I want to make. Company pages are good, have them, but build your program and build your relationships off of the personal profiles. So now I'm going to hand this over to, I'm going to stop sharing and let Mindy take over to show you, we'll go into a little more detail about the profiles and what we see working now on LinkedIn with the profiles.
Okay, I will share my screen here. Oh, John asked a question about, maybe you want to address this, Susan. Can you share a B2B example of a page, like a good LinkedIn company page?
I don't like company pages, so let's go. Mindy, you've got the, do you want to share it? Let's just go look at Hewlett Packard. That's one that comes through.
Right.
They're always one of the top 10 or so in terms of pages.
And I feel like it's interesting. It doesn't even have that much under the About Us section. I think types of companies we work with usually have a beefier About Us section. They are posting frequently. Their most recent update was 2 hours ago, which is good. You can see like their featured groups here, which are good. So if you do have groups, you should make sure that they are connected to your page. Let's see. Yeah, they have, 2.5 million followers. It's quite a few.
Oh, they only paid $1 million to get those.
Yeah, that's it. Let's see. And John's asking, is there such thing as a company profile, or is it just a company page? And I think the answer to that would be it's just a company page. Like companies do not have profiles like people do. I have seen a few people trying to masquerade as companies, and that's not a good idea, because if LinkedIn does find out, they will shut you down. Isn't that correct, Susan? Like if somebody tries to set up a company page as a personal profile.
They frown upon it, definitely. I think that this About Us that we're seeing here, John, would be more, that's where you would tell your company story. But you're also going to tell it on your personal profile too, to a certain extent. But this is where here you can post things like what you're involved with in the community, what the companies, if you're doing some sort of nonprofit work, or this becomes it's a little more Facebooky, actually, I think, for what you can do on a company page. That makes sense. It's just not going to be, it's not lead generation. It's not going to drive a lot of traffic anywhere. There's not much more you can do on this than post status updates. You can't reach out to anybody. You can do sponsored updates if you want to do that. If you're getting into advertising on LinkedIn, they come from the company page.
Okay. All right. Go back to, and I think you also asked about, John, about integrated example of a personal profile, company profile, or the company, personal and company. The one that I can show you, this is John. I work with John here, and I actually did his LinkedIn profile recently. So I do not run his company page, but theirs is pretty good. Let me show you. You'll notice the branding matches, and I feel like that's really important for the branding. So when you come to the Lemonly company page and you go back, I should probably leave his open so you can see his, but you'll see like the Lemonly images are very similar. And that's really important to reinforce the brand. So that's something I usually recommend when I am working with people on their profiles and trying to integrate the two. And then when you come here, you see like the content manager, and that they are looking for a content manager. And just like the images here look very Lemonly-like. And we are working on some of his images, but even if you look through his activity, you will see some of the images here, and it reinforces the brand just through the images here. And the types of, like, he's very focused on people-centric companies, and you just see a lot of people-driven. You see a lot of the same types of things in his feed as you would see in Lemonly's feed. So you see like pictures of the company.
Mindy, what's the number of followers on this company page?
631, which isn't bad at all.
That's not bad, yeah.
Especially they're a relatively, I think, 20-person small agency. So they're not very large, but I feel like they do a pretty good job. And I feel like it does work really well with his own personal brand. But it's had to be intentional. Like, it doesn't happen by accident. You really have to think through your strategy, like what is the branding for the company and how does that fit into the personal brands of, whether for this example, he's the CEO. For others, it might be, the directors or the marketing team, the salespeople. So you really have to think about how to tie the two together and how they reinforce each other. So that's kind of an example. And I'll walk through some examples of other LinkedIn profiles. And Emily, you shared yours with us. But first, let's just go through kind of what I view as like the anatomy of a LinkedIn profile. And if you have questions, either jump in or throw them into the chat and we can talk about them. The first thing I like to look at is what people see when they land on your page. And so let's see less. This is all people see when they land here. So what you want to do is make a statement. So this image here I took from my own website, so that's kind of across all of my social profiles as the header image. So when people do come here and maybe they have seen me elsewhere, they will recognize the image, probably subconsciously, that they've seen it somewhere. Oh yeah, that's Mindy. So when you do change like an image on one social profile, make sure you do it across the board. Or if the website changes, I feel like this section here is a really good spot to put either your company logo, if it's something like John at Lemonly, he has like Lemonly behind him. I feel like that's good. It reinforces his brand. I feel like the image could be better. And I have talked to him about this, just getting it, like actually resizing the image for LinkedIn would be better than what he has here. But at least there's something there that reinforces that image. The next thing you want to pay attention to is your headshot. Ideally, you want to get a professional headshot done that is clear, that is just your face, hair, and it should look similar to how you look in real life. I have recently gone curly, so I probably will update my profile picture to be curly hair. And I know that sounds like a silly thing, but to people it really matters, because when they see you online and if you are making videos, this picture should match what your videos look like or what other content looks like, or if you're going to events, you want people to be able to recognize you. And as a female, I know it's like I like to hold on to pictures as long as possible, because you feel like you look younger in them. But try to make sure it matches what you look like in real life. So that's my big tips there on the image. Go ahead.
If I can just interrupt here. So about a year ago, I think it was, LinkedIn changed to these circular images, and it really became important that it's a tight headshot, because it's not showing as much territory as it used to when it had the square ones. And you really want to get up close on that.
That's a really good point. And then next, make sure you have your name here, and that should be whatever you go by, however people know you. I know some people list that maybe their real name, and list whatever people are looking for you on LinkedIn as. So if you have a nickname that you go by, include that here. If you also need to, you can include it in brackets. If you need to include like a maiden name, I know when I recently was married that I had to, keep that maiden name in there. So however people are finding you, make sure that is here in your name. And what I have seen people do that I don't like is when they put other things in the name fields and start putting like LinkedIn expert or sales expert along with their name. That's not a best practice. They are doing that because they're trying to gamify the search function in LinkedIn and pop up higher in search, but it looks spammy. It doesn't look professional. Some people also include emojis. I don't really recommend that on LinkedIn. I think that's fine on Twitter. I think it's great on Instagram. Maybe on Facebook, just depends. But on LinkedIn, make sure it looks sharp and professional. Then you want to focus on, this is what I call like the most important section, is your headline. This ranks very high in search. So if you have keywords that you are trying to rank for, if there are words that people are searching on LinkedIn that matter to you, to your business, to finding new clients, prospects, to your company, make sure those words are included here. And you have 120 characters with spaces to play with, and I recommend you use all of them. So I usually tinker with this section quite a bit because it really does matter. So try to get as many keywords as you can in here without it sounding clunky or like you just threw keywords together. So what I kind of look at is like the formula for this, and I think it's similar to your formula, Susan. It's kind of like your job position or how you see yourself first, and then kind of helps. I like to use the word helps or some kind of action verb here, and then who you help and how you help them. So you're helping, I like to help them building strong personal brands, effective thought leadership programs. If you can fit it in there, you can also talk about the results that you generate. So you could say helps executives build strong personal brands that lead to new business or something along those lines. So you can play with that and see what works good for you, and also tinker with it to see if you're popping up in search more. And I will jump over here to this dashboard.
Mindy,
yeah, go for it.
Before I forget it, sometimes it makes sense to have your title, your your title in this. For example, if you're working with CEOs and you're the CEO of your company, that can sort of loosen up the connection there, where they see, oh, okay, he's a CEO. I'm going to connect with him because he's a CEO, as opposed to that you might be a sales rep or something like that. So
I think that's a great point. Yeah. We should actually go through each of these as we're going through. Yep, that's a good example. So for John's, I made sure to put his company here because that's really important to his branding. He wanted to be sure that was first. And then his position, because CEO, people see that, just like you mentioned, Susan, and they like, oh yeah, I should connect with him. And then I used the same helps, because I feel like that's important and kind of gives that softer touch, and what he helps people do. And basically he's focused on entrepreneurs. So that's pretty much like your target audience. So his target audience is entrepreneurs. So that's why that is right there in the title. And he's focused, the two words that he wants most are like company cultures, because that's his big personal branding thing, and doing work that matters. And how he does it is through visual storytelling. So I feel like that's another good example. This one, David, I worked on his as well. He was actually looking for a new job at the time. And so his was a little more focused on recruiters and kind of trying to pop up in search for those types. So he made sure to put senior technology leader, because that would be things that they would type into search. Senior was important to him just because he has a lot of experience in the industry. But he also wanted to kind of incorporate a little bit of his consulting stuff that he does. So that's why he used the word advising executives, just to show that he does things besides just his day job. So he's trying to combine a couple things here in his profile. And Emily, let's look at yours too. So Emily, you talked about confidence and power coaching. And I think with yours, I think I would probably just play with some of the wording a little bit and figure out how to make it really punchy. So it seems like one continuous line. So like who you are, and then how you're helping people, and the types of results you're generating, or the types of people that you work with. So I think that's what I'd focus on here. I've used this, like what you did here, which I think you get a lot of good keywords in here. But I think just like the breaking it up with the brackets, I think visually people they don't follow the brackets. So I think maybe just making it like a little statement, almost like your statement, what you stand for. But very good. You got a lot of keywords in there. That's awesome. Okay, so that's the most important. So if you only have time to change one thing on your LinkedIn profile, that's what I recommend changing. Focus on your headline. Make it awesome. And I've had so many people say that they found me by searching for me on Google with social media marketing. And I think that's really interesting because LinkedIn and Google play well together. So if you're ranking really well in LinkedIn and you have the right keywords here, you're also going to pop up in Google, most likely. So get that dialed in. The next section that is also really important is your summary. You have 2,000 characters here to play with. Be sure to use all of them if you possibly can. So flesh out this section. This first section I like to look at as like a call to action. So what I want to help people do is amplify their online influence. And you'll see when I click the see less, people only see these first 2 lines here, and they see even less. They see about this much when you're on mobile. So that's why I crafted this section to be short. So when people are seeing me on mobile, they see this, and then they want to see more. So consider that when you are revamping your LinkedIn profile. Make sure you're looking at it on mobile and on desktop, because it will look different on each platform. And I like to make this section like a resource for people. So instead of making it an executive summary, like what you would put in a resume, and a lot of people do that, they just kind of copy and paste their executive summary in here and say, hey, I'm super awesome. Look at me. These are all my accomplishments. That may work for some people, but I think for the most part, if you can make it something actionable, something that people can take away and actually implement, I feel like that's good. You're helping people, and you're also building thought leadership. And you want to be really good about incorporating all your keywords in this section, because Google or LinkedIn also ranks this section pretty highly. So if you have keywords here that you want people to find you with, make sure you incorporate them multiple times throughout, but make sure it sounds kind of natural. If you're having trouble fitting those keywords in, just put specialties at the end, and then use like a combination of hashtags and also the keywords that you're looking for. to incorporate. So include those there. And then I usually like to include at the end, like your email or somewhere that they can contact you. And that's pretty much the summary section. So each person's will be a little bit different. Like for John, his is a little bit different because his first section here is about reinforcing the message that above, which is the people first company doing work that matters. So it's like you're seeing the same words over and over again, but it's really important to reinforce that branding on your profile. The more you can, the more people will remember you and remember what you stand for. And then down here, you'll see he also has ways for people to connect with him. He also has his specialty section. He wants to be speaking at events, so he's listed events that he's spoken at, and what his personal mission is. That's always something good to include, just to kind of give you that personal feel. David's is a little bit different because he is trying to find a job. So if you are in that space where you are trying to find a job, I do think it's beneficial to have kind of like a checklist here of things, awesome things that you've done, accomplishments, if you are trying to get the attention of recruiters. If you are not trying to get the attention of recruiters, this section will not serve you as well. But here's an example where I think it works and where it can be really, really helpful for those who are job seekers trying to use the LinkedIn profile refresh. And then the next thing you want to focus on is also including some media here. So media can be anything that has like a link. I think video works well. And just include, I like to include at least 2 because people will see 2 things here. If you have more than 2, I think 2, 4, 6, something even number, and I think mine says 7. So I need to fix that. But yeah, I think just a few things for people to scroll through here that reinforce what you've talked about up here would be great. So these can be just things from your blog, if you've guest posted places, if you've been featured anywhere, even if it's not exactly you, if it's your company or something along those lines, if you're trying to tie your personal brand into your company, you can list them here as well. Ideally, it should be something that you've touched or influenced in some way.
Mindy, that's in the summary section?
That's in the summary
Will you
section.
upload it? Okay.
Mm-hmm. All right, so that's the biggest part of your profile. So if you have the time, focus on those 2 sections. They are the most important. And you will start noticing that these numbers here on your dashboard, search appearances, that's kind of showing how you are ranking in search on LinkedIn. So that's a good number to keep an eye on. If you notice that your search number here starts to drop, you may want to tweak some of your keywords just to make sure that you're getting the eyeballs of the people that you want to reach. Your post views are people who've seen content that you've shared on LinkedIn. That's a really good thing to be watching too, because that's giving you like a finger on the pulse of your visibility and whether people are seeing the stuff that you're posting. And then profile views, you want to keep an eye on that as well, because that means people are seeing you, finding your profile interesting, and maybe they're seeing you in search or coming from elsewhere, but that number also tells you a good, similar to like the search appearances, but how many people are actually going and looking at your profile. If you are looking for a job right here, make sure you turn this to open. I feel like a lot of people miss this section because that will let recruiters on LinkedIn know that you are looking for a new job. So be sure to turn that to open. Okay, next section, articles and activity. Your activity is anything that you do on LinkedIn, so make sure you are doing things on LinkedIn. A nice mixture of liking, commenting, video, talking with other people, tagging people, that all builds your visibility, and people see that on your LinkedIn profile. So it's important to pay attention to and make sure you're doing something, if not daily, once daily, try doing something weekly. I feel like that's doable for most of us. If you have any articles you want to publish them here, that also establishes thought leadership. Ideally, you should be posting once a month. I have not followed my own rule in the last few months, so I have a few that need to be posted. But once a month is good. It just shows that you are being consistent and that you are talking about topics that people want to hear about and that reinforce your brand. John, or Emily, yes, does it matter what time of day you post? Really good question. I guess the answer is when your people that you're connected to are online, and that is usually typically during the workday. I've seen a lot of numbers, and Susan, maybe you've come across some too, where people check LinkedIn either during their lunch break, maybe at the end of the day, at the beginning of the day, and so those seem to be good times to post. I really don't pay attention so much to the time of day. I try to just do it within my workday. So sometime during my workday, I check into LinkedIn and try to post, engage, or do something. Because I figure I kind of just go by how the people in my network are interacting. A lot of them are working on a similar schedule, probably in a similar time zone, so they're online about the same time as I am, and I've seen pretty good results with that, and the same with many of the clients that I've worked with. So I think just do it once a day at whatever time works for you.
I would try to avoid middle of the night,
Yes.
Which is hard to do if you have a global audience. We have seen connection invitations have a higher response over the weekend with some clients. You just don't know. And the minute somebody comes out and says, noon on Tuesday and Thursday is the best time to post, then everybody starts posting and it's no longer the best time to post. So it's, like Mindy said, business hours are probably the best time to do it, but it's not, it's not going to make or break anything.
A good point. And then the next section, I guess we'll move on through, experience section. This is important, but not as important as the top. So if you don't have as much time to devote to these sections, that's okay. With your experience sections, make sure that you have the most important or current job listed first, and it is a little bit more company focused. So I would talk about what you're doing that ties into what the company is doing. This one is definitely more conversion company focused, and I talk about the types of programs that we run, and then I also talk about what I specifically do, and I feel like that's good because then people can see how that ties into the company. So I'm reinforcing the company brand, but also talking a little bit about what I do, and I'm very good about including all of my keywords here because a lot of these words are things that people would type into LinkedIn search. So that's another good opportunity and a good place to put what you focus on specifically. And let's look at a couple other examples here. With like a CEO's profile, focus very much more on the company and reinforcing the Lemonly brand. And so he talks about their work, the company culture, and the experience of working with Lemonly. And it's not so much focused on him. It's kind of like his vision, but how it ties into Lemonly. And then he also includes some media here. They're an infographics company, so he has some infographics here for people to look at, which I think is really good and reinforces the brand again. For somebody like David, that is more of a job seeker, he doesn't have as much here. It's pretty much a little bit about the company and what he did at the company, and then he didn't have too much that he could actually share here, so he put stuff about the company that was published across the web, which also works, and it does give a little bit of media here. Great. And then if you are like, for example, for my profile, I also do some consulting, so it's not just the conversion company, and so I list that second. So put whatever one you want to be first because that will actually pop up here. And I want to be linked with the conversion company before linked to my own consulting stuff. So make sure to make that distinction if you are doing what a lot of us do with like the side hustles or we have multiple businesses, put the first one first. And ideally they should be kind of similar. I've seen some profiles that maybe the person's a photographer and they also do a day job in technology. If photography is not relevant to your LinkedIn connections, just take it off your profile and just focus on what's relevant to your LinkedIn connections. That's usually what I recommend there. And then you can list any prior positions that you've had and kind of what you did at them. I think the farther down you go, the less relevant they become because they are older positions, but they still can be good for search and for credibility. If you have positions that you were in high school or 20 years ago and they're not really relevant to what you're doing now, just take them off your profile, let them go, it's okay. And then your education section, this can be important. John, we both went through the Alt MBA program, so I felt like this was relevant to my education section, so I kind of beefed it up here. And then you can list any other stuff here. But education, I feel like it depends on your industry. For a lot of people, the education section is not as important. It just depends on the industry that you're in and what is building your credibility as a thought leader. Volunteer experience can be good. It just depends on the industry that you're in. I think just having one or two things here is great if you haven't volunteered a whole lot. If you are in the if you are in the industry, nonprofits and such, where this section could be more important, make sure it's beefed out just as much as your experience section. And then getting into the featured skills and endorsements, you have up to 50 skills here to include. Use all 50 because these words also help you rank in LinkedIn search. So try to pick the most relevant keywords. What I would recommend to figure out which ones to do if you don't know which ones to start with is go look at somebody like you or look at a thought leader in your space that has a decent LinkedIn profile and just kind of pick the keywords that they have listed under their featured skills and endorsements to get you started. Recommendations are great. They're harder to get because people actually have to give them to you, and you have to ask for them most of the time. But if you can get some here for your most relevant position, that is great. It gives you some credibility, even if it's just 2 lines, and you can ask people to recommend you and maybe kind of give them a couple lines to get started, what they can say about you. That helps to get these recommendations. Accomplishments, these sections here some of them used to be a little more prominent in the old LinkedIn interface. They are not as prominent anymore. So you can see I have a lot of things under publications because it used to look really impressive, and now it kind of just jumbles together. So I don't think I'd focus too much here on publications unless maybe if you have books, if you have very important articles that you want to share with people, or places you've been featured on Forbes, or some site that increases your visibility and credibility, include them here. I'm probably going to clean up my own publication section just because I feel like it looks a little too cluttered. Any courses that relate to your job or credibility, include them. People will look for those, especially if maybe you're trying to find clients and they want to make sure that you have done certain courses or have certain trainings. They will look here. Certifications, somewhat important, just depends on the industry you're in. Projects.
Mindy, isn't that where you would put like degrees, or like some of the scientists and engineers that we work with? This is where that stuff's going now, right? So that can be very important.
It can. I think it just depends on the industry that you're in. So like, I think some of our clients, like in industrial hygiene, they have quite a few certifications, and I feel like those probably are very important to people looking at their profile. So you would want to make sure that they are here. Languages can be important, just depends on your industry. Same with projects. Honors and awards, they're kind of, they used to be a little more prominent than they are now. Organizations, just any that you're affiliated with. So I feel like this section, if you don't have a lot of time to devote to it, then don't focus so much on it. Focus on the stuff up top. But that pretty much takes us through the entire LinkedIn profile, and I know that was a lot to get through in a short amount of time. So any questions, comments, feedback?
Under the education, I do think it's important to list where you've been to school, because that gives you access to other people that list that school. So if you, especially if you went to a large school, you put it on there, and it opens up your ability to send connection requests, or basically to send connection requests to other people that went to that same school. So that can be good.
That's a great
point. Same thing if you worked for a large company in the past, and maybe it's not so relevant now, but you could just put it down there and put, Microsoft, even if it didn't have anything to do with what you're doing now, it will open up everybody that's worked for Microsoft for you to be able to reach out and touch.
So Mindy, I great job first off, because I don't touch my personal profile. I haven't touched it in so long. So I made adjustments on the fly while you were going through it. And,
good.
And it was enlightening for me to see just how LinkedIn has evolved, because if you don't stay in it, you create a profile 4 years ago and you don't realize like, oh, you can crop a photo now, and oh, you can do that. So thank you for sharing that. On another extension idea, I think you should do something in Alt-MBA again, like do a 15-minute on this, because I think there's a lot of people out there that need to polish up their profile. And that's what I would just call it. If you want to polish your profile, I got 15 minutes. Let me share how to do it. And it just gives you that little push. And I don't want to massage mine anymore. I did it just enough, just so I feel like, okay, I've touched this and I feel fine. Now, of course, I'm going to probably see a lot of results from just these adjustments, and I'm not looking for results right now. So, those are a couple thoughts.
Oh, great. Yeah, I'm glad it was helpful. And I'm curious, what did you adjust?
I adjust the headline. I adjust the cropping of the picture. I adjusted some of the skills. I adjusted education. I mean, I didn't copy your Alt MBA, but I just typed in Alt MBA and just said Alt MBA.
Good.
But, and I remembered that it was something that people were talking about in Slack as an option, and it never registered to me. And if anything, to me, it's not to water down my actual MBA, but it's more about, if people are looking for those that have done Alt MBA, I'm going to be findable now, if findable is the word.
Hey, John, did you jot down what your numbers are now in terms of how often you show up in search?
I didn't jot them down, but I screenshot them. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it'll be just interesting to see what kind of changes that does make.
Yeah, and for me, mine is highly tied to when I post in some of those private groups. When you have 45,000 people, the moment you start posting, you see the numbers go crazy. I mean, from all that. So I know I can influence that. So what I'm going to do is just not do anything for a couple of weeks and then just see what happens. Because I didn't even have the job thing, which I'm not looking for a job, but I'm always looking to connect people. So if somebody finds me valuable, I'd rather them connect to me, and then I say, I know a guy like me, and I don't want a job anymore. So
Mindy, I also found that really helpful. For some reason, I struggle with the idea of the keyword, how to use them, in my summary and in my title there. And what you said helped to clarify that for me. And I love the fact that you have a call to action as your first little bulleted sentence. I would never have thought to do that. That's really helpful, especially since I've got a company page, but nobody goes to it. Nobody. And I recently discovered something, and I don't know if this is something I should be putting energy into or not. I think I had about 1,000 people in my network when I went on and started paying attention to LinkedIn. And so that's just from 25 years of working in industries and, accumulating names. So now I want to build this list, right? Because I'm trying to build a brand. And so I realized that if I go in, I connect with you, Mindy, and I go in and I look at your connections, that I can write to, there are probably 100 people in your list of connections with whom we have at least 2 or 3 people in common. And I just started sending out notes to all those people saying, hey, I see that we share several people in common. Would you like to connect? And so I started doing that in the technology industry and some other industries where I'd like to get more traction. I've been able to grow the list exponentially. Like, there's no limit to how many of those I can send. And people go on and they say, oh, she knows 3 or 5 people I know. And so they say yes. And of course, I don't know any of these people. Like, my whole list of network are, well, not my whole, but a lot of people are people I don't really know. Is that a no-no, or is that a good strategy, or is that a...
If you had asked that question 4 or 5 years ago, it would have been LinkedIn really frowned on it, but we started 10 years ago getting away from that because it's a networking site. You're supposed to be meeting people that you don't know.
Right.
And ever since they came out with Sales Navigator, now they sort of promote that, it's for salespeople and it's good for meeting you don't. Occasionally, I still run across somebody that says, I can pick up the phone and call anybody that I'm connected to, and they'll take my call. Like, well, okay, but you're missing a whole lot of other people that you could be meeting and forming relationships with.
Right. So then do you use, as soon as you connect with them, do you send them something and say, hey, here's what I do. Are you interested in talking about this? Or, I mean, do you make a pitch? Do you ask for something? Do you offer something?
We're going to get into that in detail and later things. But to answer your question right now, Emily, don't make a pitch right away. That's a mistake that we see salespeople making a lot. They'll send a connection request, it gets accepted, and then right away they write back and say, hey, can I have 20 minutes to tell you about what I do? That doesn't get a good reaction. You have to provide value first. But there are ways of doing it that are, can happen pretty quickly. And so we'll go through all of that.
Okay.
Future time. So next week is building your network strategically. And then I think after that is when we start talking about nurturing and engaging, because a lot of people do go through and they make all these connections and they get connected and then they never do anything with it. And, that's not terribly effective either.
Right.
So that's what this program is all about.
Cool.
Anything else, guys?
Yeah, just one quick question, either for you, Susan, or for Mindy. As I look at integrating a company page with a personal profile, and I look at the intention, because I love, what you guys said about the brand. It's a brand extension. Looks the same, feels the same, it smells the same, it sees very similarly. Where have you seen personal profiles and company pages go vastly wrong? Because it was nice that you stated, this is what it looks like, but what have been some examples of some cases that, you wouldn't even know that they were linked together? Because I like to see bad examples of things too.
We could spend a little time coming up with those for a future, or post them in the group. Because I'm sure there are plenty of examples. I think the biggest thing that I see that goes wrong, John, is that people will spend time on putting together a company page, but they don't spend the time on their profile. So when somebody goes in and looks at the CEO of this company that looks pretty good on the company page, and they just see this really incomplete personal profile, I think that is a mistake. That's very much a disconnect.
And then much as we talked about the stickiness for personal profiles, meaning, making them more searchable, improve the search. Are company pages the same way? Do they operate the same way, that the more you design a company page, you can make it as sticky, as searchy? Again, searchy as a word. Is that possible?
LinkedIn has just started with the company pages showing up in a search that you do. So if you were searching for certain keywords, let's say you were building a lead list through Sales Navigator and you were using certain keywords, though it was going to search those keywords on the profiles, you couldn't look up the companies. But now we've noticed that within the last few months, they will search the company pages too. So I think the answer to the search part is yes. As far as it being sticky, I'm not sure exactly. Are you mean about for getting people to come back over and over again?
Sure. I mean, I'll give you guys an example, real life example. I am starting I bought a franchise called Modern Acupuncture. I have 3 licenses. It is about bringing acupuncture to San Diego in a more convenient, accessible, and affordable way. Do I want doctors to refer their patients to us? Absolutely. Do I want acupuncturists to come to us so they can be hired? Absolutely. So there is a B2B play and there is a B2C play. Yeah. So I'm just looking at it like, okay, well, my personal profile, I invest in lots of companies. So me putting Modern Acupuncture in my personal profile, I don't see a medical facility in in San Diego finding me to say, hey, I have doctors that need to refer pain management to your acupuncture facilities. So I'm just trying to, again, distinguish, what is a company page for in that scenario when I just said, I have a modern acupuncture business. I'd love it if doctors referred to us.
So, Mindy, wouldn't you think that's sort of like an outreach thing, John, where you would actually identify the doctors that are on LinkedIn that you would want to connect with, and then reach out to them one-on-one? There's also probably some groups, LinkedIn groups, that would be useful to check into.
Perfect.
Yeah, I'd follow up and second all of those things. I don't think it's necessary for your profile to be changed.
It does become an interesting challenge, though, doesn't it?
It does.
Because we do have people that are, all over the board in terms of they sit on the board of directors for these kinds of companies, and they're involved in all these other different kinds of companies. So it makes the profile a bit of a challenge. But don't do multiple profiles. LinkedIn does not like that. So does that wrap us up?
I think so.
Yep, no further questions.
Well, thanks, you guys. I will be sending you an invitation to you can be charter members of the Facebook group. And, if you're finding value in what we're doing, spread the word and get other people to join us.
Sure.
Should we do this next week? Because it's the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Should we skip? If we do this, is anybody going to show up?
Oh, Jay says skip.
Okay.
Yeah, because I was thinking about it too in my Thanksgiving cooking schedule. So yeah, let's skip next week.
All right, then everybody have a good holiday and a safe one, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Sounds good.
Jay,
Hi,
what's going on, man?
What's up, man?
I haven't seen you in a while.
Let's talk.
Absolutely. All right, man.
I'll hit you up.
All right.
All right, bye.
All right, bye, everybody.
Bye.
Take care.